Hey, boo. Hey, happy whatever day you're listening to this on. I want to talk about getting help and why everything still seems like it's falling back on you. So, this is going to be for my girlies who you've tried hiring, you've tried delegation, and for some reason, it just did not work out for you. You didn't see the ROI that you hoped for after you hired or after you delegated. And this could be hiring a team member, but it could also be like delegating to a system. Like you might feel like, okay, I created the system, but it really didn't help me that much. And so I want to talk about what this gap is. What's the gap that's happening? And I want to talk about the leadership gap that sales and hiring and delegation, it actually can't fix this, because I think a lot of times it's easy to blame the person that we hired, or it's easy to blame the system that we tried to use. It's harder to recognize, oh no, I just have a gap as a leader. And this is something that I had to definitely confront within myself when I started hiring more, or when I started implementing more systems. I had to realize, like, okay, I can't actually say that this other thing was the problem, because actually the problem is my leadership ability. There's a gap in my leadership. And so I want to talk about that, because it is frustrating when you hire help and it still feels like you are holding everything. And even the best leaders feel this way, like incredible leaders. And still you can have this feeling, or you can be caught in the gap of your leadership ability, right? We can always grow. I feel like leadership is one of those areas that you're constantly growing and evolving in business. People make the joke all the time of entrepreneurship is the ultimate personal development, but it really is, because at every stage, at every level, at different points in your business, you're going to realize that it requires a different level of you. It's going to require a different level of personal development. And so it's so real. The best founders, the best leaders find themselves in this position. And so you're not crazy for this. You're not crazy if you feel this way. You're not crazy if in the past you've hired help and then you haven't hired since then, because you're just like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if this is worth it. This is such a valid experience. And it is disappointing. We're disappointed that we got a VA, we hired the contractor, we got this coach, right? Even coaching, right? You got a coach and you hired this person, and it just feels like you still have to do everything. Everything still came back to you. The work was still on you. What was required, it still all fell on you. You still had to make so many decisions. And you were hoping that this hire would free you up, but instead you feel like, no, like it actually made things worse that I hired this person, because now I'm having to do two jobs, or I have to do either their job, or I'm having to teach them how to do their job, which is a lot more work than I have the capacity for. And that's real. Like, that's so real. I remember when I was hiring for my agency, it was so hard to find social media managers that could basically duplicate me. And what I realized is that I can't expect someone to just come in and be me without teaching them first. And so that was something that I had to like really recognize, of like, okay, you're not being a good leader by hiring someone and then throwing them to the wolves and hoping for the best, right? You have to teach them, you have to train them, you have to give them the tools they need to actually succeed. Mind you, all my processes lived in my head. So how was she supposed to do the job if she didn't even have anything to do the job with? That's crazy, right? That was a gap as a leader. Okay. And that's something that I had to come to terms with. And so an uncomfortable truth that I really want to lay on you today, one thing that I want you to embrace is that delegation does not remove your responsibility. And that was a huge thing that I had to overcome. I had to overcome the fact that me delegating, or me giving this role to someone else, me giving someone else this task, did not remove my responsibility. And that is hard to confront with when I, even myself, I have conversations about like, okay, you need to make someone else responsible for this. But just because you delegate it doesn't mean that they're now responsible and there's no responsibility on you. People talk about this all the time in the coaching space. Just because you hire a coach doesn't mean you're going to be successful. You still have to do some of the work. The responsibility is still on you. And it's the same with team. At the end of the day, you're still responsible. But what you want to do is you want to hire people and equip people with the tools necessary so they can effectively be responsible for the role that you have them in. And they can't do that if you don't set them up for that success first. This is where it comes back to leadership, right? Because if you hire someone, you just say, okay, you're hired, here's your role, go do it. That right there exposes unclear leadership, because as a leader, you haven't been clear enough with them. They don't know what they're doing, and they're not going to assume responsibility for your business when they're unclear. They're going to constantly come back to you because they're scared. Like, they're scared. Like, I don't want to mess this up. This is not my business. I don't want to mess this up. Let me go back to the person who has all the answers. So you've created an environment where the business is founder dependent. You've created a business that you are now the bottleneck. Even though you have team, even though you have help, even though you have systems, it's still founder dependent because you haven't created the systems required to set up your team member, your systems, whatever, for success. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit more about the leadership gap. So what happens with the leadership gap is several things. One, there's no clear decision ownership. Okay, so decision ownership essentially is who is responsible, not just for the task, but for the outcome. Okay, so decision ownership, being the person that is in charge of this, they're not just responsible for the task, they're responsible for the outcome of the task. And so delegation is asking, can you do this? But ownership is saying you own the result and the decisions that get us to this point. So any decisions required to get this result, you have everything you need to make those decisions. That is ownership. So a VA that's posting your content, that's not ownership, right? They're delegating, they're just doing, versus a team member that decides what gets posted and why it gets posted. That person is ownership. Okay. And there's a difference, right? And so sometimes we hire people hoping that they take ownership when really their role and their function and the way they operate is delegation, right? Is to be delegated to. And that's not a bad thing. We do need people in our teams and in our businesses that can just do the thing. But then we also need strategic thinkers, right? We need people that can actually own every part of the role. They can own the decisions. They can say to themselves, you know what? I think that this would be better. And I'm going to do this because I think, or I believe that this can be better, right? So they're owning not only the result, but they're owning what needs to be done or the decisions that need to be made in order to get that result. Oftentimes the person who owns everything is the founder, you as the founder, right? And so that is why everything is so stressful, because you are the owner, and then you go and you hire a bunch of people and you think they're going to be the owner when really they are people that delegate. And it's not because that's their role. It's because you haven't equipped them with what they need, the gap. You haven't equipped them with what they need in order to own the role. Okay. So that's something that you have to take. Like, you got to eat that, right? I had to eat that. I had to eat that in my business. I had to eat the fact that, you know what? I actually didn't set this girl up for success. Okay. There was something she could do. She had to come back to me for everything because I didn't give her what she needed. And that is something that you have to be very, very honest about when it comes to how are you showing up in your business. And also you have to be honest about this when you're thinking to yourself, okay, but I tried to get help and it didn't work out. It's like, okay, but did they have what they needed? And did you have those things in place? There were probably tons of things that you didn't have in place. Like, when you really think about it, you didn't have this in place for them to actually see in the role. And that's why they didn't. Okay. So that's thing number one. Thing number two is that there's no definition of done, right? So in a leadership gap, what can happen oftentimes is that people don't know when something is done, right? When something is enough, what the end goal is. And that lives in the founder. The founder, you as the leader, you have to know what done looks like. You have to know what the end result is. Your team is not going to just make that up for themselves. Now, if they are a owner, if they are in a ownership role on the team, then yes, they will contribute ideas and definitions of done. But at the beginning, this is your role. Your role as the leader is to identify and communicate what done looks like in the company. And then from that point, people can execute and implement, and then they can take ownership of how we get there. But you have to have that first. The last thing that I want to say about the leadership gap is that a lot of times the founder, like you as the founder, you're still absorbing all the risk. And that becomes huge. That becomes something that when it's time to make decisions, because everything lives in your head, you just feel debilitated. You feel like, oh my gosh, I can't make another decision because I'm so worried about what happens after I make this decision. What's going to break down because of this decision? There's nobody else that can absorb any risk. And even if someone else could absorb a small risk, that would help you at least be able to think properly about what needs to be done. But right now, your business runs off of your own intuition. It runs off your vibes. I joke and I talk all the time about my business runs on vibes, but the strategy behind my business is actually not vibe at all. It's just the way that I show up and present is all vibes. And I don't want to say I've taught my team to understand my vibe, but I have taught people how to interpret my vibe to help me, like, okay, we got to have some constraints. We got to have some parameters around here. Okay. So that everything makes sense. We got to have some boundaries so everything makes sense. Right. But at the end of the day, a lot of founders, their business runs off of intuition, and intuition is a very scary place for your team, because your team don't know what they're getting from you, right? Your team doesn't know what to expect from you. Your team doesn't know if you're having a good day or a bad day, because you're running off of intuition and everything lives in your head, and that's stressful. So your team is going to do what? They're going to check every single thing by you, because they don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to make things uncomfortable. They don't want to make anybody upset. They don't want to mess something up. So they're running everything by you. And now you're sitting here thinking, oh man, this team I hired this person, but they're not doing what I need them to do. And it's because you're not giving them an environment to thrive in. That is important. And that's a leadership gap. That's not their fault. That's a leadership thing. So what I want to leave you with on this piece is that if every decision is still routing back to you, you don't have a team problem. You have a leadership design problem, right? There's something that's happening in your leadership, whether it's you as a leader or the people that are on your team that are leaders, that is causing some sort of breakdown. And now everything has to route back to you. So the reason why more sales or sales can't fix this is because more money creates more complexity. I've talked about this in a couple of other episodes, but more money just means more clients, which makes this whole operation even more complicated because now you're trying to manage existing clients plus new clients. Your client load now is going to increase, which means you're going to need more effort and work from your team. It becomes this messy thing that sales cannot help. Sales is going to show, revenue is going to amplify your leadership gap. And this is why sales can't fix this. So what the fix is, or what I would recommend first as a fix, is to optimize your decision density. Okay. Now I don't know if I made this up or what, but I would say decision density is how many decisions in your business requires you specifically. Okay. So decision density, how many decisions in the company require you specifically. So if you have a high decision density, like a lot of decisions require you, that's going to lead to burnout, right? You're going to be burnt out. You're going to be tired. You're going to want to fire your team. Even if you don't hate your team, you're going to have the feeling of, do I even need them, right? You're going to question why you have the team and what the team is doing for you. If you have a low decision density, you're going to be able to scale. That's your freedom. That's your breakthrough. If you have low decision density, if decisions don't route through you, if you're not required for a lot of decisions, you're going to scale. Like, it's inevitable because your team can run without you. They can do without you. They're autonomous, right? That's what everybody wants, an autonomous team. You do that by having less decisions run through you. Your team should be able to make decisions. And the reason why they can do that is because they have a leader, aka you, who is setting them up for success. You have the business systems in place. You have a foundation in place. They have a very clear, hey, this is the direction we're going in. This is what you're responsible for. You can own this role. You can own these decisions. They can feel very confident and safe to do that. Most founders, I find, they delegate their task, but you keep the decisions, right? And that is a problem. If you are delegating tasks and you keep the decisions, then your team is going to always come back and check in with you. Your team is going to do something, but they're going to check in. For example, when I was saying about my team members who I would check, like I would basically go in, and after they would create content, I would go and check the content and I would say, oh, I don't like this caption, or I would do this or whatever. The team could have done that. Like, I had somebody on the team that could have done that. They could have did quality control for me, but instead I was doing it. So the team would execute and they would wait for me to check. And that just creates a bottleneck because now they're waiting to put out content because I had to check everything. Or maybe like you review everything. Like I was reading on Threads actually the other day, and someone was saying something to the effect of like, if you have a team and you have to review and revise all the emails, then you're not a leader. And I could not agree more because yeah, if you hire somebody, I did this, right? You hire someone, they write emails, and then you go and you review and revise them. What's the point? I mean, yes, will there be a spelling error that might get through every once in a while? Okay, I'm a mom, right? People should expect spelling errors from me because I'm a mom. You should also expect spelling errors because I talk too fast and I type as fast as I talk. Like, I type very, very fast and I talk very fast. So you can expect spelling errors just on the strength of that, right? But also, it's like, why micromanage all those little, like, that is a sign of you need to hone your leadership skill if you have to hold so tight to every step. And it doesn't mean that you can't have standards. I want to be clear on this because a conversation I have with a lot of my clients is like, but this is our standard. Like, our standard is spelling in this, that, and the third. And I'm not saying that it's okay for your team to just have egregious spelling errors all over the place, but 1 or 2 spelling errors every like quarter, you'll be okay. It's not going to tank your brand or anything. I've seen people make some of the most craziest spelling errors, and did people laugh about it? Yes, but also like it didn't take away from their message, didn't take away from what the person was trying to communicate. And actually, I feel like those types of things, like, people just like, it makes you seem more human. So it's okay if they make a small mistake. Now, if it's consistent errors or whatever, that's a whole other conversation, right? And then also, there are things that you can put in place. Like, there are safeguards against that. Grammarly, right? Okay, before you send this email, make sure it runs through Grammarly. That can be just part of the protocol. Or you can have someone else on the team that is doing those second checks and those passes and stuff like that, so that you're not doing it, so that you aren't the bottleneck. Because the minute the founder's the bottleneck, that's when everything breaks down, because nobody wants to disappoint the big boss. Okay? Like, you can disappoint your direct boss. That's okay. But they don't want to disappoint you, right? So they're going to constantly come back to you. And then you're going to feel like, again, I've hired these people, and what was the point? Because they still need me to do everything. and you don't want to be in that spot. So now I want to leave us on a little exercise that I want you to do. I want you to basically do this exercise for the next 5 days. So for the next 5 business days, I want you to write every decision that comes to you or that you have to make. Like every decision that if someone brings a decision to you, or if you're just like working, you're like, oh, I have to make this decision. Write it down. And it could be something as simple as, what do I post tomorrow? That's a decision. I want you to write down every single decision that you have to make. Okay. Because I think that like for some of you, if you don't have a team, this episode could feel like, oh man, like I'm not here yet. Trust me, you are here, because there are still decisions that you make that you actually don't have to make, or you can make it at one time. So for example, what to post tomorrow. You could have made that decision a month ago, right? If you had a content strategy. So it's like, okay, what decision are you making every single day for the next 5 days? And then I want you to categorize each decision as strategic, meaning it's something that only you can do. I want you to describe it as operational, something that you shouldn't have to make this decision. Somebody else should be able to make this decision. And then the third one is, it's reactive. This decision should not exist. Now, reactive decisions, these pop up, like these come at you sideways sometimes. Like you're like, oh man, I didn't see this coming. So reactive decisions, I will say, you don't commonly come across these, but if you are getting a lot of decisions that are like dumpster fires, you're like, oh my gosh, like why do I have all these fires to put out? That's something to think about, because you need to create systems around this. So if your business depends on your constant presence in order to make decisions, then you have a leadership design problem, and that's something that we want to work through. So before my camera dies and I'm not able to record the rest of this, I just want to say, if you haven't done so yet, please go and read our State of Moms and Business report. It was a huge labor of love, and I think it will help you just understand that you're not the only person that is experiencing different things in your business. It shows the patterns, the trends, all the things that people, and especially moms, are experiencing in their business in 2026, and it's going to be super, super helpful for you. If you haven't done so, make sure you go read that, and until next time, I will talk to you later, darling. Okay, we made it through that before my camera died, because it's about to die. All right, episode 4 in the books.